Oh, oh, oh. I look like absolute hell. Oh my gosh. I look terrible. Let's see if anyone's coming to this thing. I look terrible. There was an old story one time of Jim Brewer and Jack Nicholson. They were at an LA Lakers game. And Jim Brewer always looks super high. And Jack Nicholson walks up to him and says, "You look just how I feel." And, I feel gross and I look gross. So, hi, Amber. Thank you for saying that. I'm letting it get curly now. I'm doing the whole curly durly thing. Oh, excuse me. I had an agenda. I was gonna do the charts of Drake and Kendrick Lamar and do their synastry and shit, but I think we'll have to do that another time. So I was hoping just to do people's, um, natal charts and look at transits and stuff, perhaps some progressions. Amber says, "You don't look gross." Thank you, Amber. You're always very sweet. To me, at least. Oh, excuse me. What I thought was funny, though, I was pulling up Kendrick Lamar's chart just a second ago. And he's a Libra rising. Isn't that wild? I should put this stuff up on the screen in just a second. Oh, excuse me. Let me just let everyone know that I'm live. Live right now on Tube for free chart readings. Anyway, no published post. Gosh. Will you look at Amy Winehouse's chart? They made a movie on her. Let's pull up Amy Winehouse. That's a good idea. Let's find out what her birth deeds are. Amy the Winehouse. I used to love Amy Winehouse. That was so sad when she passed away. Amy Winehouse birth chart. So let's go to Solar Fire. I wonder if Amy Winehouse's chart is even in Solar Fire. It might already be in here. Amy Winehouse. See if it comes up. God, I have such a bad headache. No, it's not in there. It's not in there. Gosh, it's been so long since I've gone live. Like I got diagnosed with degenerative disc disease, and then I had minor surgery, and then it's just been like boom, boom, boom. And I've been a crazy nut. I've been an absolute nut. So, Amy Winehouse. Ooh, she was born the same year I was. September the 14th. She was a Virgo. She was a Virgo. 9/14. 19. Why am I not seeing very well right now? 1983. That's my year. I should have known that. Birth time. 10:25 p.m. And Enfield, England. Middlesex. Middlesex. Doesn't sound like enough sex. Okay. Okay. Let's quick throw this up on the screen. Hello! So glad you've made a video. Thank you so much. Yeah, I've been away for a while. For too long, and I've got to start making videos again soon. My next couple videos I wanted to do synastry with Kendrick Lamar and Drake, because I thought that was interesting. I've just been watching a bunch of this stuff like today about all that, and there was a thing about Drake claiming he had a mole in like Kendrick Lamar's circle that was feeding all this erroneous information. But like, why would anyone do that? That doesn't make any sense. It just sounds like sounds like trying too hard, to explain shit. Anyway, if anyone wants any chart readings, you could throw your stuff up there. But right now I'm looking at Amy Winehouse. This is really interesting because she has a Gemini rising and the North Node conjunct her rising, which is really interesting because when you see the South Node in the 7th house, which in this case it would be, that typically signifies someone who's working for other people. And I don't know much about her autobiography, but I'm sure having been a young performer, that she felt like she was always doing things for others, right? Maybe in a subservient sort of position to people in her life. Now, the other big thing I see right off the bat, well, so the whole thing with yeah, I can't respond to the chat. So if you want a chart reading, put your birth information in the chat and I will write it down and we will go through it. Like right now I just have Amy Winehouse up because Amber asked for Amy Winehouse. You sure can. People who want to get, so Claudette just said, I made it. Can I get my chart read? Yes, you sure can. Just tell me I don't look hideous right now because I feel hideous. I feel hideous. Amber says she can send it over. Thank you, my love. I appreciate that, Amber. I'm going to write stuff down in here, too. If I could do a voice memo. Let's see. Janet Robertson, April 6th, 1964, Middletown, Ohio, 7 a.m. Okay, I got that. And then Fallen Clue, May 20th, 1987, 12:35 p.m., Morgantown, West Virginia. Perfect. I'm sorry I'm reading this out loud, but it's like, I hate typing. But Amber, you're probably getting this for me too. I appreciate it. Morgantown. Did that come out right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Claudette. I appreciate you saying that. My hair, this is how it looks when I don't straighten it. So this is, And then Claudette. Claudette Reed, November 11th, 1990, 3:54 p.m. And I know this sounds like such a stickler thing or like such an anal retentive thing, but please, like, date, time, city, because that's the order I have to enter it into the software, and I get all like weird, So, oh, Claudette, you have two? Are those two different people? Oh no, that was okay, I see. Alejandra, hello, how are you? You like it, it suits me. Well, I appreciate that. Well, let's look at Janet. Oh, wait, there's Shani. Oh, Shani Swift. Hello, sweetheart. You are such a darling. Thank you so much. Okay. Let's go to, the first chart I had was Janet. And we can always look at Amy Winehouse later, Amy Winehouse. Oh my God, Amy Winehouse had Mars conjunct Venus in Leo. That's really wild. When I think about Mars conjunct Venus, I think about people who have like a balance between their masculine and feminine nature. So for people who are, AFAB or, assigned female at birth, when they have that, it tends to make them a bit more, assertive, masculine, driven, going for the things that they want, oftentimes. Whereas for AMAB people, people assigned male at birth, it goes the other way. It makes them way more sort of, they attend to their appearance. They're more concerned with their comfort, their Venusian things. It can make them seem a bit more effeminate or a bit more passive, stuff like that. Ash Foster music. Hey, Frankie, it's Tyler. Hi, Tyler. How are you? What about her drug addiction? She's got a Capricorn moon in the 8th house, sweetheart. Her 12th house ruler is Venus. Let's see the condition of Venus. Venus in Leo. Is it being, oh, well, in conjunct Mars. And Venus is stationing retrograde here also. That's the 12th house thing. But the moon, it's a very unhappy moon. It's a very unhappy moon. What else is going on with Pluto here? First house ruler Mercury. Retrograde. See, it's a happy Mercury though. But retrograde. Mercury's very happy in Virgo. I have to sit with this chart a bit more, but Saturn in the 6th house is another indicator of that sort of stuff too. You know? But moon in the 8th house, I often see addictive type stuff, and especially an unhappy moon in Capricorn. And the moon rules her 2nd house, which is almost like being stolen from. Like if someone stole her money, I don't know if that's a thing. But yeah, that kind of thing. Venus rules the 12th house, and Mars rules the 6th house. So we have mental and physical health together sort of coalescing there retrograde with the retrograde Venus. But I'm just riffing it off this chart right now. I'm not giving it justice. But Saturn in the 6th house does confer oftentimes chronic health issues. I typically look for drug addiction in the 12th house. But it makes sense to me still. Anyway, let's go to Janet. Let's go to Janet. Janet Robertson. And I think I have April 6th, 1964. Middletown, Ohio. Okay. Gosh. That's why I always say daytime city, because I get caught in one direction and it's hard for me to switch directions. Taurus Mercury stuff. I'm slow. Slow. Middletown, Ohio. I've got several Middletowns. I got Middletown in Butler County, Champaign County, and Crawford County. Which county was it? Do you know, my darling? Janet, Middletown, Ohio. I'll go with Butler County, because that sounds like the main one. Butler County. Janet, can you just confirm that it was... Oh yeah, Butler County. Perfect. Yay! Let's throw this up on the screen. Oops. Cancel. And up on the screen here. There we go. There we have Janet's chart. We got a Taurus rising. Taurus rising. Taurus rising. So that means the eclipses here have moved into your 6th and 12th house. So we had an eclipse back in April, right? That would have been in your 12th house. I think it was relatively conjunct your sun as well. And when we have these eclipses going between the 12th and the 6th houses, this is like a phase where we have to deal with a lot of healing. It's a lot of mental and physical anguish. I mean, and I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way, but for anyone with a Taurus or Scorpio rising right now, you know, there's a lot of painful things going on. And with the 12th house stuff, it's typically mental health. And I think of this as sort of like the cocoon phase, where we've gone through a lot of painful events and we sort of have to turn inward and figure out who we are in the midst of all these things, you know? Like oftentimes we've had, like 2022, would have been the Taurus and Scorpio eclipses. And that would have probably felt like a big identity crisis or an identity shift or a lot of physical health problems. And now this is sort of like the healing phase. It's not fun necessarily, but it's, you can think of this year going up through, you know, the end of this year, quite frankly, until eclipses start changing signs, as a healing sort of time, you know, to turn inward, to go back into your, as I say, your cocoon, in order to let changes and new experiences and new feelings wash over you. You know, it's really not a good time to be focusing on other people or externalizing things. It's more of a time to focus on yourself, right? And process big changes or big hurtful events in your life, really. But it's not all bad. I think of this, eventually I want to write a book on eclipses, because for me, I have this whole cycle of how eclipse phases happen, you know, psychologically, you know. So this is very dead on. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You have a lot of stuff in your 12th house. So there's, you know, there's going to be issues surrounding mental health and addiction in your life probably already. The sun rules your 4th house of the father. And being in the 12th house usually would indicate that dad was an alcoholic. Or, you know, had mental health issues or substance abuse issues of another kind, you know. Oops, I got to turn to live chat so I can see people's live things. There we go. So, I mean, that's often a thing. But then we often struggle with these same things, legacy issues that we get from our parents too, you know. And you're an Aries sun, right? Which is known as being very active, right? It's a very, I mean, they call it a masculine sign, right? But it's more in terms of like yang as opposed to yin. It's the active, you know, ruled by Mars, you know. But when you put it in the 12th house, there's, you know, there's an uncertainty about oneself. There's sort of a sense of instability, you know, and that oftentimes correlates with depression. And so we do see a lot of like depression kind of stuff with these placements. But it doesn't always have to be that either. You have Saturn in the 11th house in Pisces, so you're in the midst of your Saturn return, sweetheart. Your second Saturn return, excuse me, which is a big deal. This is a big turning point in your life, darling. And when you have Saturn in the 11th house, what I think of oftentimes is the kid who was sort of picked last for dodgeball, you know, who felt left out, who felt ostracized by their peers, who was made to feel weird or lonely, quite frankly. And as we get older, we tend to get a smaller group of friends, you know. We tend to have a very close circle of people that we trust. And we get very suspicious of groups of people. Pardon me, I'm just putting in Sor Arden. Hello, sweetheart. Arden, January 11th, 1981, 5:21 a.m., Vancouver, Canada. Shani Swift, September 28th, 1991, 10:01 a.m., Dorset, Dorchester, UK. Cool. Did I spell that right? 1 T. I hate Siri. I hate Siri so much. Okay, so back to Janet. And see, Janet, this whole process now of Saturn going through your 11th house once again, it can feel quite isolating, right? This is a period of your life going up until 2026 where it might feel like you get abandoned by supporters or like you feel who your real friends are, that sort of thing. Oh, and please like the stream, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I do love tips, not just the tip. And you can, you can tip me through YouTube, thanks down below, or my Patreon is listed right here where you can donate. And then, my website if you want to book a reading, because those are really good. Anyway, I'll just talk about a few more things with Janet and then we'll move on. But you see how this could feel like a time when you're finding out who your friends are, or you're finding out who your supporters are. And it can feel sort of like being abandoned a little bit. So just be prepared for certain lonely feelings, and I'm sure they've already been happening, But Jupiter's been going through your first house for a year now and is about to go into your second house, which is kind of exciting because Jupiter in our first house, it can help with our confidence and stuff like that. It can make us feel like more awake and alive, fuller energy. Typically a year where Jupiter's in our first house, we start to feel a lot better about ourselves. We start to have a certain degree of confidence or a certain degree of validation or affirmation that comes from, the substance of our work. And then when Jupiter goes into the second house, it's like the lucky planet in the house of our stuff and wealth. Hopefully you see a little bit of a modest return, from it. Hopefully you see some, material benefits. That's what we like to see with Jupiter in the second house. But it's not always like that. It can be the beginning of building something up. I started my business when Jupiter was in my second house. It was the beginning of building something up, you see? So this is a very important time, and you're having your Mars return. Mars is in Aries, right? And Venus is in your first house still. So, when Mars is going through your 12th house, though, people need to leave you alone, need to be careful about falling back into self-destructive patterns, so stay away from naughty things as best you can. And try to enjoy having Venus in your, unwoke yourself. Who's he on? Amber, can you get rid of this person? Can you get rid of this person, Amber? Whoever unwoke yourself is. Yeah, get rid of them, Amber. You don't need to even worry about it. Anyway. Amber, don't even bother talking to them. Just, can you just get them off the chat? Get rid of them. Thank you. No, people are just coming in here to harass me. It's okay. When they start invoking the name of Jesus, just get rid of them. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Amber. Yeah, people are just trying to harass me. It's okay. Well, you have a 10th house moon. FDR had a 10th house moon, I'm pretty sure, too. Can be a very nice thing. Cancer's your third house. You might have a very successful sibling. I wonder if siblings have been very important in your life with that third house north node, or maybe extended family in general. But having the third house ruler in the 10th house would often indicate either a public speaking or education job or line of work, or writing or something like that, or siblings who are fairly successful. So, but we should move on to the next person. See, people are just coming in to harass. So. People are just coming in to harass. Who is the next person? Ooh, before we forget, Ash Foster Music. Ash Foster Music, June 17th, 1997, 8:47 a.m., Crossville, Tennessee. And then, yeah, Amber, if you could just watch the chat for me and get rid of people, that would be wonderful, because I have some, I've got plenty of haters. Plenty of haters. Half of them astrologers, the other half transphobes. Bethany, August 29th, 1988, 5:12 a.m., Dayton, Ohio. So we have a cue here. I better start moving quickly. I better start moving quickly. Let's go on to Fallen Clue. Fallen Clue. That was one of my favorite movies, Clue, with Tim Curry. Tim Curry does such an amazing job in that film. It's really funny. May 20th, 1987. Oh, your birthday's right before mine. And my birthday's coming up soon too. So is yours. Um, Gosh, I wish I didn't have ADHD. May 20th, 1987, 12:35 p.m. 12:35 p.m. Morgantown, West Virginia. What is Fallen Clue? You haven't heard of the movie Clue? It was I want to say it was the early 90s or late 80s cuz Tim Curry was really young. And it's just really such a funny movie. It was one of those, yeah. It, yeah, I can't imagine many of you have even seen it. So we have Fallen Clue. I have May 20th, 1987, 12:35 p.m. Morgantown, West Virginia. And we have a Leo rising. And Leo rising. I've got quite a history with Leo rising. Amber, it fell from a tree into my head. The first thing that comes out at me as I look at this is your Saturn in the fifth house. And when I see Saturn in the fifth house, I often think, well, it depends on our biology a little bit, but people, assigned female women with Saturn in the fifth house, they can oftentimes have difficulty with childbirth, with pregnancy, or they typically don't even want children in the first place. But I've known people that have had difficulty having children or had difficult births surrounding these sorts of things. But one thing you'll psychologically see, oh, Bethany says they love Clue. It's such a great movie, But yeah, psychologically, what we see with these things is people who didn't get to have a childhood, who felt like they had to raise a parent, perhaps, Or oftentimes there's a sense of not being able to have fun at all, having been a very serious child, And Saturn, it's a wide opposition. It's not, it's 10 degrees. You can make an argument for it, but they're opposite by sign, so there's definitely a tension between Mars and Saturn there. And it's like nothing ever comes easy. It's having to struggle for everything, It feels like having to struggle for things. And oftentimes with Mars in the 11th house, we get very defensive about our friends. We can have lots of fights with friends. We get very contentious. We can be a little obnoxious. And you're a Mars in Gemini like me. So we both like to argue. We're not even aware of it oftentimes that we're, arguing, or sometimes we intellectually spar just to, test our mettle or whatever, or test our ideas. And we just have to be careful that we're not just causing problems for the sake of causing problems, Mercury in Gemini, though, it's the master of multitasking. Mercury, rules Gemini and is quite happy there. But when Mercury's conjunct Chiron like you do, you might see things like neurodivergence, or painful things having to do with your thought or learning life or learning stuff. Stuff that makes regular like school or intellectual activity more difficult sometimes, or maybe it feels like people don't understand you or they misunderstand you all the time. But what's really cool is you have your first house ruler, which is the sun, in the 10th house, pretty close to your midheaven. So oftentimes that's pretty good for some modicum of success or leadership or, getting recognition or accolades for things, getting recognized. you know? And Venus rules your 10th house and is also in the 10th house. Once again, you know, it's a pretty good signifier for getting good notoriety in a career or work thing, or getting a good reputation in general, you know? Transit wise, Saturn's going through your 8th house, and you have an 8th house Pisces moon. And that can be quite difficult because with the Pisces moon is difficult anyway, because it has a natural sort of empathy. And by that I mean it sort of absorbs like the moods and feelings of other people around it. And sometimes it's hard to distinguish between their own sort of emotional state and that of someone else. And so it takes a lot of alone time oftentimes to, you know, process things on your own. The big thing for this is allowing yourself to feel shit. Excuse me. And not trying to intellectualize it so much like all the Gemini stuff would like to do. Excuse me. Gosh. But then the other thing about 8th house moon is trauma. Like, it's stuff we stuff down. And oftentimes it's mother trauma. So with Saturn going through this house and Saturn having passed over your moon here a little bit ago, probably a few months ago, the whole thing is about dealing with loss and learning about loss in different ways. It could be financial loss. It could be losing someone that you care about or someone in your life. I don't want to say anything that's too dramatic. Oftentimes it's more a sense of having to come to terms with old hurts and old wounds, because we store those things down in the 8th house, right? 8th house is often, I mean, it's other people's stuff, right? It's also death and debt. But I think of it also as the things we hide from ourselves. Thank you, Fadi. I appreciate that. It's been a long time. I have not gotten ready today or anything. Like, this is just, I have no makeup on. I have nothing else. I'm just, you could see all the patchiness. I took a walk in the sun a little bit and I got a little sunburn. You know. So anyway. And I mean, to be quite honest, I feel emotionally like shit right now. You know, but nothing we can do about that. But I'm glad you're here, Fadi. It's so nice to hear from you. And I would love to hear sometime about, yeah, Amber, let me get to the other people and yeah, I'll read your boyfriend's chart. But Fadi, I'd like to hear sometime about how the situation is going on over where you are, because that did not go away. There's still a lot of horrible stuff going on. It's just now been eclipsed by Rafa, you know, and I can't even go off on it. It's just unspeakable, but you know what I'm talking about with Rafa. So anyway, as Saturn's going through your 8th house, it can make you face a lot of things that you push down over the years, you know? And sometimes it does come through material losses and things like that, but it's about letting go. And that's why I bring up themes of forgiveness, trauma, hurt, you know? Because forgiveness is essentially squaring a debt, an emotional debt oftentimes. And to me, that's very 8th house. So that's what I'd expect from that right now. But then you got Mars in your 9th house, so watch out, because you're going to be very opinionated right now. Very, very opinionated. And you don't want to get... See, you already have Jupiter in the 9th house, which means, you probably are a very spiritually minded person. And you're probably also very deep, or either you're interested in politics or religion or astrology. The 9th house is also astrology. And you've had this mystical bent since you were probably a kid, you know. But when Mars is going through that house, we get very attached to what we believe, and we get in fights about it, and we get in arguments with family, and then we, you know, cut people off over it. So, you know, just be aware of tempering that sort of aggression, you know, at the very least with diplomatic communication. You don't just want to bite people's heads off because of what you believe, but sometimes if people are coming at you with morally repugnant ideas, then, you know, have at it. Fadi says, I appreciate your concerns. It's really terrible how people, yeah, Jesus. Yeah. What other transits? Jupiter has been going through your 10th house, which hopefully has helped your career or your business or whatever it is, your visibility perhaps. And Jupiter is like on your sun, you know, right now. Like literally on your sun. So this is an auspicious time. And then Jupiter will go into your 11th house. And once that happens, that'll be a year-long thing of you sort of coming out of your shell once again. Perhaps focusing more on, you know, your social life. The 11th house is hopes and wishes and friends and supporters, you know. A question that has always been on my mind is what happens with Saturn's return to your 2nd house? It's difficult. I mean, I have Saturn in my 2nd house right now. And oftentimes it's where we have to learn to manage our personal resources again and better. You know, like for me, it's been learning how to actually run a business. And I'm still learning. You know, I was able to run someone else's business in my previous jobs. It's just more difficult learning to do it on your own. So, but we feel like we have to get more frugal. We feel like our material resources get more constrained, like we have to consolidate. We have to tighten our belts, to use an English idiom. We have to be more judicious about our spending habits. We have to be more careful. We have to conserve. That's the key word for Saturn in the 2nd house is conservation. Conservation. Now back to fallen clue really quick. Jupiter going through the 11th house is good because it gives us, people support us more. It might feel like, you know, when you have Mars in the 11th house, it can feel like you don't get a lot of support, right? And you have Chiron in the 11th house too. When Jupiter comes through, it feels like people begin to support us a little bit for that frame of time. And again, Jupiter will stay in Gemini for about a year. So, for about a year. God, I look hideous right now. Oh my goodness. Ugh, I usually put on makeup and stuff. And my hair looks like Medusa. Like, it may as well just be snakes. You know. Algal. You know. Anyway. We should move on to someone else's. I just want to make sure I'm not missing any big stuff. Mars and Aries. We talked about that. Venus is in Taurus again. You have Venus in Taurus. This is very sort of auspicious for career opportunities or getting recognized. People noticing that you're doing a good job. I always say it's the time when you should work on your resume and you might get help or support from someone in that, or someone might help you or coach you on a job interview, things like that, you know? Anyway, so let's go on to the next person. Let's see, who is after Fallen Clue? I have Claudette. Reminds me of Cosette from Les Mis. Cosette. 11, 11. 11/11. 1990. That's Armistice Day. 11/11 after World War I. 3:54 p.m. Thank you for saying I look amazing. I do not feel amazing. I do not feel amazing. I feel gross as hell. Claudette Reed. Claudette, where was your city? Did I miss that? Claudette. Claudette, I need your birth city. Oh, it says Amarillo, Texas. Okay, now I see. Amarillo, Texas. Okay. Amarillo. I don't know if you say Amarillo. Amarillo. I mean, I look at it and think Amarillo. Okay, Claudette. So here we go. Claudette's an Aries rising. I hope I have all your stuff correct in here. Fallen Clue. Thank you so much. You're 100% on point. Greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. I'm very low energy right now. I have postural orthostatic tachycardial syndrome, and I'm just not having a great day physically. But I felt compelled to do this regardless. Thank you. Thank you, Claudette. I really appreciate that. So you're an Aries rising, sweetheart. I see Saturn in the 10th house. I see another Gemini Mars in the 3rd house. See, Mars is going through my 3rd house right now, which is, indicated me saying some really awful shit, which I have done. But Mars going through the 3rd house doesn't mean it caused anything or made you an asshole. I did that all on my own. Just means be aware of it. Empress Visions, you hope my day gets better. Thank you so much. Thank you. After this, I'm just going to get ready for bed and veg out probably. Because, you give off great positive vibes. Thank you. Thank you. I can be a very rotten person. So thank you. That's very sweet. I appreciate it. But I can be a very rotten person. But with the Aries rising stuff right now, Mars is going through your 1st house. And for an Aries rising, this can be quite fun. On the one hand, it gives you like a surge of power or confidence, right? Like, when Homer Simpson had bought a gun, he was telling Marge, I felt a surge of power like God must feel when he's holding a gun. It's like a surge or rush of energy, and you could feel more assertive, but you have to be careful not to impose yourself on people or try and force people into what you think they should do. Mars in the 1st house can be very imposing. It can be great for leadership stuff. It can be great for your confidence, but it can also be great for arrogance. And confidence comes through pain and through accomplishment, while arrogance comes from, just being an asshole and thinking that you're the best at everything. So Claudette says, we love a self-awareness queen. Well, I need to work on my self-awareness for sure. But thank you. That's very sweet of you. I do need to work on that a lot. And we do a lot of stupid shit out of fear. We do a lot of stupid shit. And you got 8th house stuff, Claudette. And the thing with 8th house stuff, the 8th house is fear. And I'm just speaking from me and my experience. In Placidus, I don't use Placidus, but it's interesting that my moon in the Placidus house system does go into the 8th house. And there's something about trauma and fear. And we do really stupid fucking things out of trauma and fear. We react. It's like we see ghost enemies, surrounded by ghosts that we're fighting. I don't know if anyone remembers the movie Dragon about Bruce Lee. But if you haven't seen it, you really should. I don't know if it does justice to his abusive side, because he did have a very abusive side. But the thing that's striking me about this that has to do with the 8th house is that in the movie Dragon, he's constantly in this mirror maze, facing this dark, shadowy enemy all the time. And God, I'm going to get emotional. Fuck. And the enemy the whole time is himself. Fuck. I'm not trying to get emotional, Jesus. And that's the thing we have to learn about this trauma and fear business. Is oftentimes we're fighting the shadows of ourselves. God. I should write that down. That was pretty good. I don't know what made me think of that so much. I mean, I'm dealing with my own shit, obviously, but we keep our fears and our traumas in the 8th house, in my experience. And when you have the sun and it's conjunct Pluto, holy fuck, you poor baby. And Venus, you got this wonderful stellium in Scorpio in the 8th house. Very unhappy Venus, Ghost enemies, yeah. I don't know where that came from. It's oftentimes I'm fighting the ghosts of my own trauma as well. And that's no excuse for shitty behavior and things that we do. you know. It's no excuse for our shitty behavior. It just means that we have to be that much more vigilant and aware about ourselves. I remember there was a Tibetan Lama who visited one of the spiritual groups that I was in like 10 years ago. His name is Lama Tendar. People in Australia might know of him because he frequently goes to Australia. But he talked about self-awareness as being like an archer on a turret, you know, on a gate or a fortress. And that as you see these thoughts, these insecurities, these enemies arise, you have to very quickly take aim at them. And he's not talking about it in an oppositional way where you're necessarily fighting something. He's talking about the recognition and the awareness, and that shooting the arrow at it is putting your attention on it. And unfortunately, sometimes things have to get very painful before we see them properly, and it just sucks when that happens that way. And it sucks when we create our own shadows, you know? So anyway, but I think this is, I mean, I'm projecting here a little bit, but this has a lot to do with the 8th house and the Pluto experience. You have the Sun and Venus conjunct Pluto. That's a big fucking deal, you know? Pluto opposite Venus. Big fucking deal, similar thing. We see a lot of jealousy. We see a lot of trauma. We see things that get internalized. We have hidden demons. Things that we don't process properly, oftentimes because we don't allow ourselves to feel them. And it really, you know, trust. It's something else I think of with the 8th house. Stuff that belongs to other people. We invest our trust in people. Trust, forgiveness, all these sorts of things, very 8th house. And these are things that are very difficult for us, especially with the Pluto-Venus, Pluto-Sun thing. It's so difficult. It's so easy for us to break trust, to get paranoid, to get possessive, to get scared, frightened, all these sorts of things. It's also very alluring. You're probably very attractive and people like you, I'm sure. You know, but you have this whole other side to you that makes romantic relationships difficult because you probably get possessive and you probably get very, very hurt. I'm trying not to project here. I'm really trying hard. Now I'm trying to just look at your chart, you know. But an unhappy Venus in Scorpio has difficulty having those very surface relations. And sometimes we need to have this surface relations and the small talk and all that. Because Scorpio Venus feels like it can't relate to people. It feels like it can't connect with people super well, oftentimes. It feels misunderstood, and it can look at relationships as sort of a predatory experience, you know? Like we need to possess another person. And often, the thing is, Pluto is paranoid and possessive, not because he's super strong, but because he's afraid of losing Persephone. And ultimately, that marriage is in with oneself. It's not looking for an external person, you know? So I'm one sexy fucked up person. Oh, I bet you're gorgeous. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're gorgeous. And a lot of the stuff I've been riffing on came from my own little experience thing as I was talking about Bruce Lee and, you know, trauma and shit like that. But, and I'm not trying to project. It's just when I see your 8th house stuff and I see the Pluto thing, like, yeah. And you're going to have a painful life, you know, or I shouldn't say it like that. We learn through crises, don't we? And when people say transformation with Plutonian stuff, what they mean is facing crises. And for some people, things feel like gentle, you know, oh, aha, aha. No, but for us Pluto people, I have Pluto square my ascendant and conjunct my moon. Revelations are painful, right? We get shattered periodically and we have to put ourselves back together again, you know? And it could be difficult. But you have Saturn going through your 12th house right now, sweetheart, and that can feel very isolating. You know, I know for me, when Saturn was going through my 12th house is when I was going through divorce or separation, and I had, you know, to move out of my house and move in with friends and like literally be exiled almost. And I moved out, like they lived basically in the country or the, you know, a very more remote area, I want to say. They didn't have a dryer. We had to hang our clothes up. You know, to me, that's the 12th house experience. Feeling exiled or rejected, excuse me, from your place or your land. But you see, these things are great because this whole experience of being exiled then leads to the Saturn experience in the first house, which is about finding yourself and living authentically after having these experiences of isolation, rejection, and oftentimes addiction, you know. So I don't want you to be scared of it. Just know that this is the bath that you're in for right now. And then you'll get into another bath. See, obviously I'm thinking about taking a bath after this. And you probably don't have a great relationship with your father, with Chiron in the fourth house. And the moon rules your fourth house of father and is in the sixth house. I have my fourth house ruler in the sixth house. It can either be a dad who is a workaholic in the medical profession somehow, or someone who is actually your enemy, you know, or could have had chronic illness, you know, could be chronic illness. Like my dad, but was a workaholic, had chronic illness, and worked in the medical profession. So, you know, all that sort of stuff. But sometimes it's like they're almost like an enemy. Oh, hi, cat. So, but see, the thing with the eighth house stuff that you have, you'd probably be a pretty good therapist, you know, because I bet people tell you their secrets all the time, you know. I bet they do. But see, the Saturn in the 10th house, it feels like we don't find our way, or we feel like we don't have life direction. The 10th house is life direction. When Saturn is there, it feels like we're a late bloomer. You have mommy and daddy issues. Well, that's the other thing about the 10th house, is that's the mother. You know, I have severe mommy and daddy issues. And that's the other thing we have to be aware of, is that we don't take these things out on other people. You know? So, anyway, you could probably tell I'm dwelling on things, but Saturn in the 10th house, though, it feels like, what am I going to do? Like, what do I want to do when I grow up? Oh, I'm already grown up. What do I want to do now? It's like we never get to find out. Oh, it's Miss Colston. Yes, I'm back. I'm back, sweetheart. Thank you. I am back, kind of. You know. I've been recovering. I was sick for 2 fucking weeks. And then I was scared I was dying. I was having like these like really bad back and neck pains. And I thought I got myself worked up into a tizzy thinking I had lymphoma. And I was convinced I could have lymphoma. Because I've got OCD issues around my health issues. So. And I went to urgent care and got a neck x-ray, and they said, well, you don't have lymphoma, but what you do have is degenerative disc disorder. So you're going to have to start doing physical therapy for the rest of your life, you know, manage it and all that. So yeah, I was gone, and then I had minor surgery, and I've been healing from that pretty well. But I haven't, anyway, going off on my own shit, none of that matters. I'm just glad to see you, Ms. Colston. I'm glad to see you. So anyway, and you have the opposite, Claudette, of what I have. You have the north node in the 11th house and the south node in the 5th house. So it often feels like that the attention and the focus and stuff is on you more as a kid, or like you get more playful. God, this same motherfucker's always walking back and forth out here. Like, why is he always walking back and forth out my window? And like, I don't want to have my blinds closed because it's like the sun still is coming in, the last little bit of it. And I don't want to close my blinds, but motherfucker looks like Mitch Hedberg, you know? Hey, like, yo, bro, get a haircut. Oh my gosh. Bless your heart. Whenever someone says bless your heart, like I hear fuck you. That's what I hear. I know you probably don't mean it that way, but that's what I hear when I hear bless your heart. So that's what I hear. Anyway, well, we should move on. I got stuck on Claudette's chart because I was just musing about Pluto in the eighth house. But I'll say a couple more things really quickly about. Oh, so Mars going through the first house like you have right now. Take it easy, be careful, slow down, don't rush, because it's easy to hurt ourselves when Mars is going through our first house. You know, like if you're cooking, pay attention to fucking cooking, you know. Watch. No, I'm sure I'm no, I'm playing. I'm playing. I've known people from the South, you know. Now bless your heart. So, but just don't be rushing around Claudette so much because you could get burns, cuts, scrapes, bruises, you know, if you're not paying attention, right? But Venus is in your second house. So if you want to, if you've got a little bit of money, go shopping. It'll feel really good. The window jerk. The window jerk. I think you should go window shopping, not window jerking. Yeah, that window jerk. Oh, that's so funny. But it's the same fucking guy. Like, he's always out there. I see him every fucking day. What? Like, do you want to see me naked? Like, is that what it is? Because I'm frequently am, like, right there. You know, I'm not. I like to have the sunshine and everything, but I also don't like clothes. So, but now I think that he's walking back and forth thinking he's going to get, like, a show or a performance. And it's like, no, you have to pay for that shit, homie. Anyway, I'm sorry. Now I'm like, as I started this live stream, I was feeling like absolute shit. And I'm still feeling like absolute shit. But now I'm like getting into performance mode a little bit and like having some fun with this. And the thing about having your North Node in the 11th house is you get idealistic as you get older. You get more interested in causes or groups or participating in things bigger than yourself. It could even be finding a support group, or, you know, the 11th house can be notoriety too. You know, like getting, he may want a show, Claudette says. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what he wants. I'm vain. I'm so vain. It's awful. Oh. And vanity can be a really terrible sin. Is vanity? Yeah, vanity is a sin, isn't it? One of the 7 deadly sins. There's see, I remember from the movie Seven. There's gluttony, wrath, sloth, um, gluttony, wrath, sloth, lust, envy, vanity, and the motherfucker's walking back again. Like, yo, homie. One time, I swear to God, I'm gonna go back to your chart. I'm so sorry. I swear to God, one time, I was sitting in bed and I looked out at him and he looked away. And like, I don't know if I'm just being paranoid, but you know. What's in the box? 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 That fucking movie. Oh my God. That fucking movie was so wild. What's in the box? It's so funny because Gwyneth Paltrow went to a costume party, and you can find a picture of this. And Gwyneth Paltrow's at a costume party with a box in her head, you know, that had the little sticker on it and everything. Like her head was in the box. It was really creepy and funny at the same time. Anyway, we should move on to someone else's chart. I just want to make sure. And yes, it's a sin. It is. Yeah, vanity is totally a sin. When it takes our attention, we should have a balance between our attention on ourselves, which we do need some, and on those who we care about, who we love, you know. And if we love someone, we should attend or be able to fill them up in that way, you know, or have it be reciprocal, you know. To be a partner is to have a partnership rather than, you know, just taking or giving in one direction, of course, you know. And Claudette likes the bad boys and girls. You probably like dangerous people growing up. And an attraction to dangerous or criminally styled people. You know what I mean. Not even necessarily criminal, but the James Dean types or whatever. The gangster or I don't know, the drug dealer. The type of people who mom and dad would be very upset if they knew you were dating them. So, but we should move on. I wonder if you have conflicts with siblings, though, with Mars in the third house. That can oftentimes be a sibling who you don't like anymore. Valiant Chicken, hello. First time here. Hi, Valiant Chicken. I'm glad you're here. I'm not glad that you're seeing me without makeup and I'm in my nighttime clothes. So, unfortunately, you're seeing me after minor surgery when I feel like, not great. Anyway, we should move on. I'm sorry, Claudette. I hope I gave you enough there. Because we do need to move on. Shani says, the virtue to balance out of vanity is meant to be humility. Yes. They don't really speak of the virtues, only the sins. That is amazing, Shani. That is a really, really good point. Claudette says, I like a good felon. Yeah. But Shani, that was, humility. That's a big thing, is humility. And for me, I'm trying to think of what humility looks like to me. And I think humility looks a little like, being able to take responsibility for actions and stuff like that. I've always thought of humility as a sense of scale, like recognizing your relative smallness in something else so vast, Thank you, Ms. Colston. You are so sweet. Thank you. Let's go to Arden. I just wrote down Arden. I didn't. Oh, wait, no. Oh, yeah, Arden? Whoever Arden was. Sorer Arden. Okay, Sorer Arden. And that was... Gosh, I'm hungry now. January 11th, 1981. Was that it? It was January 11th, 1981. I was doing voice memos and I hate. Let's see. Sorer Arden. Yeah, 1981. Okay, 5:21 a.m. 5:21 a.m. Vancouver. Okay. I think I got everything correct. Ooh, excuse me, gosh. Ugh. So we have a Sagittarius rising. I hope I got everything correct. Oh, let me go back down. Cool, wonderful. We have a Sagittarius rising. Perfect, I got you, my love. Thank you, Sora Arden. Sister Arden. Sister Mary and Joseph. Mary Catherine Gallagher. I'm sorry, I see Sorer and I think sister from like occult fraternities and stuff, Like I was in Builders of the Adytum Bota when I was first learning tarot when I was like 20, 21. And they had like Sorer this and Freighter that and Sorer Freighter, Sorer Freighter. It's like, just call me, you can call me Jay, or you can call me Ray. So Sagittarius rising, let me see what the first things that jump out at me are. Well, you have your ruler of your rising sign in the 11th house conjunct your most unhappy planet. Now, what I mean about that is that there's a thing called sect in astrology where it's day and night, and you were born during the night. How can I tell? Because, well, first of all, your birth time said 5:21 a.m. And by night, I mean when it was dark, when the sun was below the horizon. So in what's called a night chart, Saturn is your most difficult planet. I have a night chart as well, And so But your Saturn is also exalted in Libra, which makes it a bit happier, you see. So on the one hand, it sounds very different that you have your first house ruler conjunct Saturn. But on the other hand, there's going to be, there's a give and take with it, right? So you might have chronic health issues. Sometimes having your first house ruler conjunct Saturn will do that. It can give us mental issues. And by that, I mean like it could be neurodivergence, mental health issues, things like that. But Saturn is chronic, right? It's slow moving, chronos. And so the Saturnian issues tend to develop sort of, they carry on over time, and we just learn how to manage life with them. And once again, it's the 11th house. So on the one hand, you have this dichotomy between support and abandonment. It might feel like you get support from one side of your life and a complete lack of support from another group of people, Because when I think of Saturn in the 11th house, I think of people who feel alone, who feel isolated, who feel rejected, and that sort of thing by their peers, right? Who don't get a lot of support. But Jupiter in the 11th house is getting that support, right? And both can be true at the same time. Both can be true. There can be parts of our life where, neurodivergent and mental health issues, yes. Yeah, I have them too. Where's your Mercury? Mercury in Capricorn. So funny. I think of Mercury in Capricorn as sort of, you could still be neurodivergent and stuff like that too, but, well, I guess this is in a way. Mercury in Capricorn gets stuck on things. It gets really stuck on things. I'm a Taurus Mercury. We do too. And we have very linear thinking. But it's like you have to, things have to be very clear for us, right? We don't often get a lot of nuance. And we can be quite slow. Earth Mercuries are very materially minded in that we need facts. We need, something right here to show us. You can't just, have a bunch of conceptual stuff. We get lost and we get confused oftentimes. What helps us is tactile, feeling something out, having to do something ourselves, having to do things and feel them out. People can't just explain things to us. We'll get lost, Capricorn Mercury too, the business thing. I think of people who are very, very driven in a particular direction of thought, planners, right? People who plan, people who come up with, well, first if we do this, and then we do that, and then we do that, Anyway, I should talk about transits though too. Oh, you have a moon in Pisces also. Look at that. Yeah, we just talked about Pisces moon sort of sucking up other people's emotions. And the big lesson for that is being able to take our own time to sift through our own emotions and allow ourselves to feel things, So, but Saturn is going through your 4th house right now, which that can indicate difficulties with your parents. It can be either difficulties with your parental relationship, or they're going through something. It could also be your private life being upended, over this whole period of time. It can feel like home is no longer home. It can feel like being a stranger in your own home. It can feel like you don't have a home, right? And having a 4th house moon, that would be very important to you, Your 4th house ruler is Jupiter in the 11th house. Jupiter conjunct Saturn could also have meant a difficult relationship with your father, because Jupiter would represent your father here as the ruler of Pisces. So maybe there is an issue going on with your parents or your father or something at this time that you're having to face in particular. But having a home and secure space is going to be very important to you with the 4th house moon. So this is a disconcerting period while Saturn is going through your 4th house, because it feels like you don't have a safe place probably. But over time, you find that the safe place is where you create it. Unfortunately. It's great when we can have support and stuff like that, but ultimately we have to We have to create that space for ourselves. And that's what this phase is sort of like for you. And then Mars is going through your 5th house. So if you have kids, they're probably a pain in the ass right now. Mars going through our 5th house can either be our kids being a pain in the ass or having to face issues because of our kids. On the other hand, it can also, the 5th house is also sex and our sex drive. It can also, very much increase our sex drive, and it could be sort of frustrating, it could be frustrating in certain circumstances. I just tell people, like, handle yourself. You don't need to wait for someone else, And your desire may be elevated right now, which is fine. You have a North Node in your 9th house, which is lovely. As you get older, you get more philosophical and deep, and you start thinking the big questions about life. Why are we all here? How is this a thing? How am I here? Oh, yes, you had to get my ex removed from the house because he refused to leave and assaulted me. And you lost your whole social circle due to his smear campaign. Yes, daddy issues too. So that sounds like narcissistic abuse. And I went through it several times with a parent and then 3 subsequent relationships. And that's typically what happens. Yeah, I got rejected from my social circle a lot too, from an issue like that. So yes, totally understand, but there's not much we can do about it besides just start picking up the pieces, So, and yes, daddy issues. What else I want to say about transits though? Talked about Mars going through your 5th house, which can be fun and frustrating if you have children. Venus is going through your 6th house. So, Venus will be going through your 6th house till the end of the month or something like that. But right now is a good time to focus on your health and good health routines. Like right now, I would take the time to start not a diet, but, a cooking routine or something. Start picking better foods or foods that make you feel good. And I'm half saying this for myself, Gotta get the boy to bed. Oh, thank you so much. You're so sweet. It was so good to see you. I hope you had a good Mother's Day too. Thank you so much. Thank you. Anyway, we should move on to someone else in a second. Yes, he's a classic narcissist. Then I had a custody battle with him. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. Luckily, I never went through that, and I hope I never do. Yeah. Yes. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. But you should focus on your... Right, when Venus is going through the 6th house, this is a self-care time. Like, you need to take some Epsom salt baths and, find foods that make you feel good. I'm not saying, like, you have to go on a diet or something. And I'm not saying go for comfort food either. I'm talking about feeling good. Venus going through the 6th house is about trying to improve our sense of well-being, And oftentimes repairing rifts, So, anyway, we should move on to the next person. Oh, yeah. Yeah, fun 5th house stuff. Enjoy Mars there for a bit. Because when Mars goes into Taurus in June, that'll be your 6th house. And you'll want to rush around to get everything done. And you got to be careful of burnout then, because we tend to push ourselves too hard. Let me go to the next person. And this is Swifty. I'm going to say Swifty. Sorry, let me look at... I forgot how to spell. I'll just say Swifty. But if you're still here, my darling, Shani Swift, that's what it was. Yeah. You're welcome, Sora Arden. Shady Swift. Shady Swift. See, when I said Shady Swift, Siri wrote it down as Show Me Swift. So we've got 9, 28, 91. 10:01 a.m. Dorset, Dorchester. What? 10:01 a.m. Dorchester. Dorchester. Yes. And thank you so much, Shani, for putting the county in and everything too. You are so awesome. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So, we got a Scorpio rising. So this means the eclipses have been doing the same thing for you, you know. You're in the cocoon phase, where it feels like you're probably processing some big hurts and some big changes in yourself and identity and all that. Maybe changes in the way you think or perceive yourself, you know, and it's really difficult to reconcile all those things. You know, you have Pluto in the first house too. You know, your chart makes you a bit nervous. 2 sometimes comes up. Well, I mean, there's some difficult things that you have to deal with, of course. Pluto in the first house often makes someone just naturally disruptive in their environment. It's not their fault. My daughter has Pluto conjunct her ascendant. I have Pluto square my ascendant. Pluto people just disturb the space just by being themselves. They have a powerful, intense presence. You know, and you and I have talked, I think, a little bit about Pluto stuff. And, you know, it does give us an intense presence. And we have to understand that Pluto is both the abuser and the abused. And that trauma creates both things equally likely, right? It's easy for abuse survivors to go in both directions. And so it takes us being aware of what's really important, right? And if we're constantly worried about self-preservation, it's really hard to take other people's feelings, right? And fulfillment into account, you know? But on the other hand, having Pluto in the first house can be very powerful, you know, and be very empowering. You know, it's intense all around. Yeah. And oftentimes when we have these Pluto aspects with the ascendant, it's like we didn't have any power as children. We had our power taken away from us, and this creates a whole bunch of traumas and neuroses and stuff that we carry with us into adulthood, you know. Let me, just in case we have time to get all these, I don't know if we will. I'm just really quickly going to write down, we had Ash Foster, we had Bethany. Okay, I did get Bethany. Is there anyone else I missed? I don't think I missed anyone else. And then we have Valiant Chicken. Valiant Chicken. April 24th, 1998, 9:09 p.m., Kingman, Arizona, Mojave County. Cool. So we have a Q. But yeah, this shit is no joke. Like, it's tough to deal with, you know? And then you have all this 12th house nonsense. And we have to deal, like I said, with someone else here, like we have to deal with a lot of mental health and sometimes addiction stuff with all that. And it's all wrapped up together. You know, astrology is not causal. You know, having a 12th house sun didn't give you depression or didn't give you struggles. Those were there. It's just that they're indicated by that placement too. Think of this as like a language or a map that we can use for self-analysis and for discerning things that could even happen in the future. You see? So anyway, but yeah, I mean, the 12th house stuff is rough. And Mars rules what? Your first house. You know, and your 6th house. So having your first house ruler in the 12th house, Amber will tell you about that, could be very difficult with mental health and addiction stuff. And it can also, like, we equally feel like we can be taken advantage of or take advantage of people, you know? And both are sort of trauma responses. And these things follow us around. You have an 8th house moon, sweetheart. Gemini moon, but in the 8th house. So trauma is something that we carry around. Like if you've seen A Christmas Carol, right? Charles Dickens, there's Jacob Marley, who's got all these chains and stuff wrapped around him. That's what the 8th house moon stuff feels like. We carry this weight around with us. And the 8th house ultimately is about letting go. And I imagine you have not a very nice relationship with your father, with a Saturn in the 4th house retrograde. Now, Saturn is in domicile in Aquarius, so maybe it wasn't all bad, but it's a fine line to walk. I know, sweetheart, it is. It's a fine line to walk. But I imagine Dad was not a very nice person. I imagine you don't have a great relationship with Dad. Oh, sorry, Ms. Colston, yes. I will get to you before we get done. See, Ms. Colston is my only member or subscriber. Well, no, not subscriber. You're all subscribers, but my only, like, member. I have memberships on my channel, and I have to get to Ms. Colston because they are my member. But some transit stuff really quick for Shani. I mean, Saturn's going through your 5th house right now, so everything just feels like when Saturn goes through our 5th house, there's a lot of uncertainty, you know? The father didn't know about me until a few years ago, and it was non-existent. Yeah, that's the other side of Saturn in the 4th house. That's the other side of all that. Oh, excuse me. Yes, me. But Saturn's going through your 5th house right now. Excuse me. And it makes life feel very uncertain. Things are not fun. They're not fulfilling. Things feel dull. Things sometimes feel like they're crashing around. You know, I don't think you have children, but often our focus has to go all on them, and we don't have any more for us. It's just, it feels like a year of uncertainty, a year and a half, you know. And when Saturn finally goes into your 6th house next year, or sorry, rather the beginning of 2026, then it's like you have to start picking up all the pieces and having responsibilities again. You know, oftentimes when Saturn's in the 5th house, it's like we can't enjoy ourselves, right? But we also don't have the capacity to take care of things typically either. It feels like things just kind of go off into chaos. So, yes, please join Ms. Colston as a member, please. Please, please, please. I think I have Ms. Colston's chart on here too. Mars going through your 6th house. This is a time to get shit done, obviously. When Mars is in our 6th house, we can start knocking shit off the list, but you have to take care of yourself and get enough rest because we can burn ourselves out, right? Venus is in your 7th house, which I hope is, you know, helping relationships or making things sort of fun in that arena for you right now. But I think we've had discussions that you know, it's not been great. Basically summed up my year. And I do all this off the cuff. I'm going by my previous knowledge and experiences. So not everything is going to resonate 100% with anyone, you know. It's just my experience as an astrologer. But I really think the big thing for you coming up is going to be, you know, Jupiter's been in your 7th house of relationships, and it's about to go into your 8th house of forgiveness and regret and trauma and facing things and the shadowy fears and death. Sometimes when Jupiter goes to our 8th house, we get inheritance or we get luck from death. But I frequently look at it as having to process a lot of heavy things we've been carrying around, like Jacob fucking Marley. And I'm sure you know about Charles Dickens, because, you know, most people do. And that's sort of like the part of the theme behind this Ebenezer Scrooge thing is carrying the weight of stuff with us without resolving things, without forgiving or atoning or whatever that means. Sometimes it means forgiving ourselves and letting things go. You know, Arnold Schwarzenegger said in his autobiography, one of the big things for him was learning how to forgive himself and let things go and move on. You know, so anyway, because suffering, there's conscious useful suffering and there's unconscious useless suffering. Useful suffering you use to become more conscious of yourself, you know. It's something with a purpose. Like, that you're suffering for an awareness or something like that. Or you're looking at yourself, which is painful, or something. Useless suffering is when it's just stuff happening to you. And you have no say in it or whatever. It doesn't mean, I'm not trying to make it seem like it's bad or wrong. Those are just terms that come from one of the gurus I used to follow. Anyway, we should move on to Ms. Colston. Where's Ms. Colston? I have Ms. Colston right here. Oops, properties. There we go. So for Ms. Colston, Cancer rising. And I think we've talked a lot about stuff in the past with Ms. Colston's chart. I think we talked about Saturn going through the 9th house before. And see, this is a big time for you because you could be learning new things, finding new spiritual paths. Maybe your politics are totally changing. When Saturn goes through the 9th house, it's like we separate and let go of legacy beliefs, you know? You're welcome, Shani. I hope that was satisfying. I hope that was satisfying. Anyway. Sorry, Hey baby, I'm on a live stream right now. I'll be off in just a little bit. I'm sorry. Okay, bye. That was my bestie, Anne. I love her to pieces, and she's a Cancer rising also. So, when Saturn's going through our 9th house, oftentimes we're letting go of legacy beliefs and ideologies and stuff like that. Letting go of old religions, spiritual things. You know, for me, when Saturn was going through my 9th house, I was letting go of, number one, occult beliefs that I'd had up to that point, and then stupid political beliefs and economic beliefs. When Saturn was going through my 9th house, I totally went through like a political transformation, like I became very pro-union. I was raised in a very conservative family, so all that was sort of like letting that stuff go. So hopefully you start, as we get into next year, I really think you're going to start seeing some light at the end of the tunnel, where we start finding something that makes us feel spiritually at home, something that resonates with us. People say like, I don't resonate. I'm like, yeah, well, you're not a guitar, It's a stupid joke, but you know what I'm saying. And this is quite interesting because your midheaven is here too, and Saturn is about to cross your midheaven. You see? Which can feel very dark sometimes and heavy. It can feel like there's no movement, like there's no space like there's no development happening. And when you have those sorts of feelings, you have to just relax into it, unfortunately. And someone very close to me told me that same thing. Sometimes you can't be expecting to feel better. You have to stay where you're at. And I do guarantee you, things never stay the same. They're constantly changing and always shifting. So at least you can take some solace in that. That things will change. But I know this has to feel really heavy for you right now. And don't worry, when Saturn goes into the 10th house, then the heaviness will be externalized. Right? It'll feel like opportunities are slow coming, or like you don't get what you want. Like your life shifts directions, which is really interesting that it follows in sequence from Saturn in the ninth house, where your inner life shifts directions, you know? And then when it's in the 10th house, then your outer life shifts directions, if that makes any sense. And then Jupiter's about to go into your 12th house, which is going to be a year of healing. That's what that's all about. You know, a year of healing, of learning how to heal from a circumstance that has been eating away at you for a long time. Now, right now, Mars is going through your 10th house, so watch out at work. Could be fights with bosses. That's how I often interpret it. Sometimes we just have conflicts with authority in general. And then the other thing that happens is we want to quit our jobs, you know, cut ourselves off. Or sometimes we just want to be naughty. Like we do things that we shouldn't do in public. I know when Mars was going through my 10th house at a certain point, that's when I started making, you know, spicy content, if you will. Which I haven't been doing lately, but I want to start doing again. But sometimes Mars in the 10th house hurts our reputation. So just be careful. Try and be mindful, because at this point, you could really see things that would be embarrassing to yourself. You know, things that hurt your reputation. Meanwhile, Venus is in your 11th house, which is great for, you know, getting support from friends. And people liking you, popularity, stuff like that. Anyway, Ms. Colston, I'm going to move on to the next person because we've got 30 minutes left. 30 minutes left. So we got Ash Foster music. I hope that was okay. Ms. Colston, I'm just seeing if there's any last minute stuff. Yeah, Ms. Colston, things will get better for you, sweetheart. And I think I've told you this, that this is a very pivotal year for you because the eclipses are going between, oops, I should probably throw it up on screen again. But the eclipses are going between your 10th and 4th house. This is the phase of manifesting in your life, right? This is a manifesting phase. And manifesting, such a stupid word. What I mean is making shit fucking real. We either move oftentimes, we start new jobs oftentimes, you might quit your job, you might find a new opportunity. Your life direction is about to shift. And you see how, like, this is a prelude to Saturn in your 10th house. So this is a big time for you. Like, I think I've talked about this a lot, that, you know, I moved out of state. I quit a job of 20 years to, you know, come here. And that was all during that eclipse phase. And that's what we often see. It's where you make shit happen. And stuff gets real. Ash Foster music. Music. House music. Music makes me feel so good. Yeah. Music makes me feel good. Music makes me feel so good. I think that was Daft Punk. Who was that? June 17th, coming up soon. Let's see. June 17th, 1997. 8:47 a.m. Crossville, Tennessee. Emanates. Emanation. There we go. Got the chart up here. Another Leo rising. So it's funny because Leo rising is opposite my Aquarius rising. So the stuff I was saying about the 10th and 4th house, you would have had happen to you around the same time as it did to me in 2022. So you probably also had some big momentous shifts in both your career and your living situation in 2022. Your moon is in Scorpio in the fourth house. That's rough, you know. Where's your Mars? Virgo in the second. I wonder if dad was a bit miserly, maybe? Or dad had money, but you weren't allowed to have any of it? Or dad kept, was maybe selfish? I don't know. Or dad maybe worked with money or sales or something like that. I don't know. A couple different ways of looking at that. But a Scorpio moon in the fourth house often, did not have a good time with mom. Often did not have a good time with mom. Well, the moon, you have moon trine Venus. At least that's kind of nice. Right? Not really supporting each other, but it would make you very sincere. Probably pretty loving. A very terrible liar, I bet. I wonder if you're artistic at all. Artistic. Or music. Or if you do any arts or crafts or music. Something like, well, fucking name is Ash Foster Music. Stupid. Ooh. Your dad was very selfish with his money. Yeah, I mean, that's what it looks like. Your fifth house is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is in the seventh house. That's pretty interesting. So I imagine, that you're not so much about the one-night stands and hookups and casual sex, and you're more about, having a partner. And you probably want a partner who is aligned with the same sort of philosophical stuff that you are. You see, your seventh house ruler is Saturn in Aries, so not happy, and in the ninth house. So you've probably had very difficult relationship history. I mean, you're still quite young, but I'm sure you've had some difficult relationship stuff. You're in college for music production right now. Very cool. Very, very cool. Your 10th house ruler is Venus, and Venus is in the 12th. First house ruler is in... So your first house ruler is the sun, and in the 11th house can make you kind of a popular person, And then the sun trine Jupiter as well. It's sort of a wide trine, but still, I'm going to call it a trine. And it can make for a very gregarious, welcoming, and quite honestly, I bet you're sort of a public performer type, Like you love writing music and you're in college for music production, but the 11th house is about putting yourself out there. We see things like, I'm not going to blow smoke at you, but the 11th house is also about fame, I'm not saying that that's in the cards necessarily, but at least putting yourself out there for friends, fans, supporters, stuff like that. You're currently in a relationship with a guy who happens to be the first healthy relationship you've had. You love him so much. That makes me so happy. That makes me so happy. It really does. But you also, with that Saturn in the ninth house, you would need someone who is sort of on the same sort of path you're on, either spiritually, philosophically, politically, someone whose ideologies you can mesh with, and you have Saturn in the ninth house, like I do, which often indicates a very difficult experience of religion growing up. Typically, we grow up with like fanatical religious parents. I grew up very, very Catholic and going to church every fucking Sunday and going to Sunday school and all that shit. But the thing that psychologically it does to us is that we lose our spirituality oftentimes early on as children. And we begin to feel like we don't believe in anything sometimes. Like that's sort of the quintessential ninth house Saturn is the skeptic. And it's not coming from a place necessarily of malice. Well, it's not coming from a place necessarily of just like an inherent trait. It's something that was learned. We have trauma that comes from either religious or, conservative or something type background. And it makes us very nihilistic oftentimes, or nihilistic, however you want to say it. But the rest of the life is sort of like a quest for meaning or a search for meaning, you know? And that's something we have to attend to. Now, becoming a skeptic for me, because I was involved in lots of spiritual groups and all that sort of stuff for so long, becoming a skeptic for me was a liberation. But you see, then this is just me personally saying this, but I really do believe that humans, us, we need meaning in some way. At least I think it's a sort of a deep need for a lot of us. So when we get ourselves lost in the sense of meaninglessness, we start longing for that sense of meaning again. And that can come from an ideology, a goal, a worldview, something like that. It comes from, I always say I don't believe in things, but it comes from believing in something. Like I say I don't believe in things, yet like I'm very politically motivated by social justice, you know? That's the word. You just said you lost your childhood magic at an early age. That is what it is. It's losing the sense of magic, losing the sense of wonder. You see? Because when we're children, we're mystified by our own fucking existence, aren't we? Like, do you remember being a kid and like, oh my God, I'm here. Like, how is this a thing? We start to feel our individuality, you know, more like between the ages of 2 and 5, I think is when they say, in child development, you know? And we lose the magic until we start to realize again that there's and this is going to sound so stupid, but there's magic everywhere. It's just whether we're receptive enough to see how beautiful a particular moment is. Even how beautiful fucking sorrow can be. When we start to appreciate the grace behind pain even. And the grace behind separation. The grace of looking, of observing, and everything is so ordinary and mundane, but it's always alive. And it's we don't appreciate the reality that everything is moving, everything is vibrating, everything is being remade every moment. On the one hand, there's only one moment right now. On the other hand, there's endless moments. And we really have to believe, as ninth house Saturns, that the next great discovery is around the next bend. It's just around the corner. We are always on the precipice, on the edge of a new great revelation. And we have to believe that. Otherwise, hopelessness becomes our enemy. I mean, Lao Tzu said that hope and fear are both phantoms that arise when thinking about self. But I'm not talking about hopelessness in that regard. I'm talking about where we don't feel the drive to aspire and to push on into new understandings, into new understandings of ourselves and others, new relationships, new ways of participating in the panoply of life. I feel like I've just gone off on a whole fucking thing, and part of it's because I'm emotional, but I think that's important to say. I mean, it's important for all of us, not just ninth house Saturns. You know, I'm so happy that you're involved in these things. The 11th house, I also think of technology, you know, and having Mercury in the 11th house in Gemini probably makes you quite proficient with networking and technical stuff. I don't know if you do any, you know, I don't know, social media stuff, but when I also think of like actual networking cables, you know, working with music technology and stuff like that. So anyway, I went off on a whole diatribe about that shit. Just really quickly, Saturn's going through your 8th house too, but you probably heard me talk about that. It has to deal with loss and how to let go of things through loss. And then Jupiter's going to go into your 11th house. And I think you're going to start seeing, more attention on you from that. I think you're going to start making more connections, hopefully with people at school, hopefully with other musicians. And with the 11th house, it's putting our shit out there, putting our stuff out in public on media or whatever for people to see. So I hope that was good, Ash Foster. I hope that was good. I'm just like, I'm in a weird emotional place. And on the one hand, I feel like I might be projecting certain things. And on the other hand, I feel like it's making me more sensitive to people. Let's do Bethany. Bethany. Oh, that's so good. I'm so glad you're getting that again. Ash Foster says, oh, you lost your mom back in March. Oh, my poor baby. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Back in March of this past year. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm sorry. That's a big one. I lost my dad when I was 20. So I feel you, sweetheart. I feel you. I feel you. But now we're going to do Bethany. August 29th. 1988. Oh, 1990. No, 1988. I was looking at the wrong thing. 5:12 a.m. Dayton, Ohio. And please make sure to like this stream, everyone. Please like this stream, like the stream, like the stream. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Bethany. There we go. Now Bethany's up on screen. I had August 29th, 88, 5:12 a.m., Dayton, Ohio. I have Leo rising again. So we don't need to talk about the eclipses because you should have heard all that, right? Well, we talked about the eclipses in the 10th and 4th house, in 2022. But now the eclipses have been oscillating between your 3rd and 9th house. So the interesting thing about that is, again, we talked about the 9th house a lot just a little bit ago. But this is like a new beginning in what you believe, in your spiritual or ideological direction. You have Mars in the 9th house, right? And you're having your Mars return right now. Your Mars is retrograde too. But you see, having your Mars naturally in the 9th house like that also could have given you a painful experience of religion growing up. Montgomery County? Well, I hope I got everything right. Well, it says Dayton, Ohio. And that came up pretty easily. Sometimes it makes me pick between counties, but this time it didn't. Oh my god. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But already having Mars in the 9th house could already have given you a painful experience of religion growing up. I imagine your father was probably religious, or maybe both. See, Mars rules your 4th house and is up in your 9th house, right, of religion. So it typically means dad was fire and brimstone, But the moon is also often the mother, and the moon in Aries and also the moon in the 9th house usually makes a religious mother or an aggressive mother or both, So there's some difficulties there with the religious past. And see, now, in the midst of all this, you have Mars going through your 9th house, stirring all that shit up, right? So you got to be careful you're not tearing people's heads off, because you could get quite fanatic probably about what you believe, you know? Or you might get very, very resistant to people telling you what to believe. I mean, we all do, but this would be an unusual, a sort of an intense trigger for you, or an intense pressure, you know? I have the moon in the ninth house too, and we have just a natural proclivity towards spirituality or philosophy or mystical stuff as a kid. You know, I think of ninth house moon kids as the ones who are really tripping out on existence and asking really annoying questions about who created God, you know, and how the universe can even exist and shit like that. You know, getting into real existential questions. You know, that is a thing. Um, and Mars is going over Mars right now. And see, Mars is retrograde. So on the one hand, that could indicate that finding your own way with philosophical stuff sort of takes a while, like into your late 30s or something like that. I mean, it's a lifetime sort of thing. But the other bit about that too, you know, I don't know what sort of relationship you have. Montgomery County. Yes, okay. I don't know what sort of relationship, if you still have a relationship with your father or not. But anything good coming out of it would happen later in life. So, you know, there could be sort of like making amends or whatever in your late 30s or something like that. Um, you know, it's always possible. You've been trying not to go scorched earth lately. I mean, yeah, you're gonna have that. I mean, moon in Aries anyway. It's really impulsive. You know, it can be just really knee jerk. You know. And Saturn's going through your eighth house right now. We talked about loss and all that, but you have your North Node in the eighth house too, which has to do with loss, grief, trauma, and death. You know, learning how to let go, letting go of things as you get older. See, a second house South Node oftentimes is very acquisitive or holds on to things, and losing things can be very painful. There might even be possessiveness in the early part of life, and you even have your sun in the second house too, which can be good also for business or for, you know, building things up on your own. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger, I've talked about him before, has his sun in the second house, and his whole life was characterized by building up his own business and his own brand, you know, and all that sort of thing. But see, for me, what I read into this rather is that as you get older, it's learning to let go of apprehension or anxiety around what you have, you know. But sometimes that takes um, a more decidedly psychological bent, where it's coming to terms with loss, letting go of things that we've held on to, learning to forgive ourselves and forgive other people. Right? Learning how to let go of fears and to face fears. These are all eighth house themes. You know, I don't know if anyone saw The Never-Ending Story growing up, but there's this part where Atreyu, right, the protagonist, has to face himself in this mirror, right? It's one of these trials he has to go through. And he recognizes himself as part of someone else's dream or experience, and it's actually the little boy who's reading the thing. But when you want to get really existential about it, you know, it's facing his own existence, and in a way it's the little boy facing his own existence through reading about the character doing it. I'm getting convoluted now, but I'm trying to understand, trying to, you know, voice a thought here. It's about facing ourselves and those parts of ourselves that we held on to, and sometimes that we have to relinquish, you know, and there's a lot of fear and grief in that. Going through a sense of personal death. St. Paul said, I die daily, didn't he? And he wasn't just talking about physical death, he was talking about a psychological thing, where he didn't even recognize himself anymore, you see. So, of course, there's a material and monetary side perhaps to both of this, but to me, the indicator here is more about learning to let things go and not being too attached to things in general. You have a 12th house Venus, 12th house Cancer Venus, you know. That's a rough one. I'm a Cancer Venus too. We get very attached to people. We get very, very, very attached to people. Never Ending Story was one of my favorites growing up. Totally get it. Yeah, it's one of my favorites too. Never Ending Story, Labyrinth, Dark Crystal, um, uh, you know, all those kind of things. Now I'm forgetting some of my favorites, but those were some of my favorites. Anyway, anything with Jim Henson stuff. Oh, what was that movie called? Legend. Oh, Legend was so good. None of you have probably seen that with Tim Curry and Tom Cruise before he got all crazy. Or maybe he was then too, I don't know. You have Mars trying your ascendant like I do, Bethany. You probably get dry skin, need to moisturize quite frequently. Anyway, Venus rules your 10th house. You could probably be a good therapist or probably good with other people's pain, but I imagine you have quite a bit of your own. Where's Libra? Libra, 3rd house. I wonder if you have a sibling who's an addict. But I imagine you have your own sort of, you know, mental health issues that you deal with. You used to love Legend. The one with Tim Curry and the unicorns and everything. I still love it. It's just hard to watch it now because it really is sort of campy. You know what I mean? It's like really campy now to look at, but I still love it. Anyway, we had one more person that I had written down, Valiant Chicken. So we'll get to the Valiant Chicken really quick. You've seen Legend and loved it. Yeah, it's really good. So we'll do Valiant Chicken really quick. Valiant Chicken. Valiant Chicken. Valiant Chicken. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just playing around. Was one of my favorite films as Bairn. I can't see behind this heart thing. As a Bairn. I don't know what a Bairn is. I'm sorry. You're welcome, Bethany. I hope that was good. 9:09 p.m. My daughter was born at 9:09 p.m. Okay, we got Valiant Chicken. Valiant Chicken. Ding, 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 ding. I want candy. I want chicken. I don't know. I'm just being... So we got another Scorpio rising. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know. Yeah. Yeah, for me as a child too, when I grew up in the 80s. So... When I see Jupiter and Venus conjunct in the 5th house, I think someone's making babies. So, I would assume that you're going to have children or that you want to have children. I would assume that you're a pretty sexual person. I would think you're someone who needs to have fun. When I think of Pisces, you see, Venus is exalted in Pisces. It could be very artistic. It could be very poetic and very romantic. You see? And it's a wide trine, but it is sort of trine your ascendant, you know? So you see that Venusian rapport there with that Scorpio ascendant. It can make you very pretty or very attractive, very charming, perhaps. That's another thing with Jupiter, Venus also. It can be very gregarious. It can be very inviting and welcoming. You see, Venus is like not just our romantic relationships, but our whole social nature. And Jupiter conjunct that makes us very, you know, welcoming. People tend to like you. Now, you have a whole nother side to you with this, you know, Moon, Saturn, Mercury nonsense in the 6th house. The thing that sucks, I have Saturn conjunct the Moon too, like you do. And it can give us pretty bad mental health shit. Like I've seen it correlate with bipolar and BPD and stuff like that. But it's not just mental health stuff. It could be body dysmorphia, like feeling ugly in our bodies. It could be actual chronic illness too. Like I've got 3 or 4 chronic illnesses, you know, and I have body dysmorphia. People say, how can you be vain and have body dysmorphia? I'm like, it's pretty easy. Just watch. But that is a thing, you know. And we talked about Aries moon already being sort of compulsive and impulsive. Aries Mercury can be that way too, just in another way. I always make fun of Mercury and Aries breaking things. Like, you know, it's like Mercury and Aries will say to you, like, oh, how does this work? I'm like, not anymore since you touched it. It's a joke, but, you know, they don't have finesse. They're like, it's like trying to hammer in a round peg in a square hole, or a square peg in a round hole, or whatever. You know what I mean? Trying to force things sometimes. And when it's all in the 6th house like that, it can feel like facing insurmountable odds all the time. You know? Your ascendant ruler is Mars in the 7th house, conjunct your sun. That's called Mars combust. I have that too. It tends to make us aggressive, impulsive, ill-tempered, defensive. Sort of like Mars run amok. It's when the sun and Mars sort of exacerbate each other. You know? When a planet is combust, it's like its qualities are hidden by the light of the sun because of how close they are. That's why it's called combust. Right? As if it got too close to the sun, like Icarus. If you know the myth of Daedalus and Icarus escaping from Crete. I mean, I'm a pretty angry fucking person too. Like, I have Mars conjunct. Yours are in Taurus, though, which makes it more difficult because that holds on to anger a lot longer. And Mars in Taurus is like traditionally known as a lazy placement because it's hard to get going. Like, it's hard to get gumption. But the thing about Mars in Taurus is when they finally get pissed off, like, watch out, because they're going to burn the world down. And when you have Mars conjunct the sun in Taurus, you might not be super volatile necessarily like I am. I'm pretty volatile. But you may be more intense with your temper when it happens, you know? You might seem stable and then you lose it. So, yeah, I would watch out for your temper. But where was I going with that? Oh, where I was going with that is that the need for relationships is very important. Like, there's a deep need for love and for connection with the 1st house ruler in the 7th house. You know, you might be a little bit of a clingy person. Most of your planets are what's called in the western half of your chart, which makes us a bit more clingy and people-oriented, whereas in the eastern half over here is more, why can I see my cursor over here? Is people see? There we go. This is the eastern half, where people with more planets here tend to be more independent, right? And, you know, the dividing line is the midheaven IC, right? Axis. And so having more stuff over here makes us more people-oriented, but also more clingy, more relationship-oriented, you know? Anyone who knows me would definitely definitely agree with you. Oh, I don't know. I'm just saying what I'm saying. What makes sense to me. And don't take anything I say as like gospel or whatever. It's just my own experience and knowledge. But having a deep need for relationships there and for love and connection. That's an important thing and an important need. But the kind of people you're attracted to would be indicated by Venus, who rules your 7th house. And those are more fun-loving, light-hearted, childlike, and very sexual people. You probably, like I said, you have a strong sex drive. And you probably need to be with people who want children. I'm assuming you want children with these placements. But you need to be with people who have that same sort of alignment with you, either who have the same sort of sexual appetite, or who also want children, or who have the same passions or enjoyment. Not so much passions, but enjoyment. People who have the same hobbies or enjoy the same things as you. That's what you need. I think we've talked about all the transits already with all these different placements, but I'll briefly touch on that. But Jupiter going into your 8th house, we've talked about sometimes there's luck or benefit that comes from death. But also there's a psychological side of it where we're facing trauma that we've built up. And this is a year-long thing, you see. It's another Jupiter healing thing. When Jupiter goes through the 8th, 12th, and 6th houses, there's a lot of healing going on. You know? A lot of light being shown, or shined or shown, on uncomfortable things. Heaven, let your light shine down. Whoa. Heaven, let your light shine down. Stares at your fiance next to you. I mean, yeah. That must be nice. That must be nice. So anyway, I mean, that's a big thing for you. It's a big thing for you. I was talking about Jupiter and then Saturn going through your 5th house. So if you're trying to have children and stuff, it will probably be frustrating right now with Saturn going through your 5th house. It might feel like you're trying a lot and stuff isn't happening or something, you know. Oftentimes there's fear, anxiety, or something around that, around fertility. That may or may not be a thing, but just, you know, just to be aware. You know, finding things for you and your fiance to do, like fun together, is going to be important. The difficult thing is Mars is going to be going through your 7th house in June, and that oftentimes has fights in relationships. A big fight happens oftentimes, or a big conflict. Someone's feelings really, really get hurt. You guys sound like you're doing great, but you know, sometimes there's big conflicts that arise and that we have to face and decide whether, you know, we want to continue or not. And so we just have to be careful about the shit that we say. I've said some awful fucking things. Pretty, you know. And it's so weird because the very thing that I was afraid of happening is the very fucking thing that I did. It's so strange to think about in retrospect. It's so fucking weird. Like, I was voicing anxiety about Mars 7th house shit, you know, a while back. And then, you know, it was me. It was me. So just watch out for that. You know, because it does cause tension and rifts in our romantic relationships. So just love each other, take care of each other, and you're engaged, and this is a wonderful thing. And I'm wishing you both the best happiness and all that stuff, but it, you know, that comes from facing things together and having genuine, sincere care for each other. You know? So, and I'm sure you guys have that. I'm sort of just reflecting in a way as I talk. And I really do have to go. Like, I've gone 12 minutes over. I'm super hungry. I feel like shit. I love that you all came. Like, this was a really great return. You know? And I feel like it was well timed. I don't know. I'm just dealing with a lot of personal shit. And, you know? Hurting people sucks. Hurting people sucks. On the one hand, there's like a balancing act oftentimes between self-preservation and like giving people what they need, giving yourself to people. responsibly, of course, and I don't know. Genuinely caring about each other is the only thing that really gets you through all that. And when things devolve into suspicion and, trauma responses and things, it's very hard to come back from it sometimes. But it's always possible. And I don't know, I think it takes time, sincerity, effort, and love. Like, like how do you show or demonstrate love? It's not a performative thing, is it? And it can't be a performative thing. It's got to be genuinely felt by the other person, And you can't control how anyone else feels, right? You can't control how anyone else feels. But you can do your best to be sincere and to have their feelings in mind with your behavior. I'm just talking for myself right now. I should probably go before I start acting a fool. I love you all. I really appreciate you being here. And thanks for, kicking out the transphobes and everything. That was very nice. And thank you for standing up for me and all that. And, I mean, to me, the real spiritual practice is, I always say self-awareness, but it's also love. Love should be a natural expression of self-awareness, And love to me is the recognition of mutual responsibility for each other. Mutual responsibility. So, anyway, you're all wonderful, and I love you, and thank you for coming, and I hope that those little brief readings were good for you. I hope they were satisfactory, and I hope you get people to come to my fucking channel and subscribe and watch, because I'm pretty good, And I'm pretty cute when I put makeup on. So, I'm going to go eat now. Otherwise, I'll keep talking to you because I emote and process, in front of people. Which isn't always the best thing to do. Anyway, love you all. Have a good night and see you next week, I think. Because this is a big week. Got my birthday stuff going on. Well, anyway. Okay, love you all. And if you didn't get to watch this whole stream, or if you didn't get a chart reading rather, you can watch the stream and chances are you'll